And I'm joined here in the booth by Bruce Canepa, who's just come back off track. Bruce, how was it first of all out there? What have you been driving this weekend? You're always in something.
Well, this weekend I'm driving a Trans Am car, so
that's perfect.
Yeah, we had a fun race yesterday, and we go out today at about 1 o'clock. So those cars are just a blast to drive.
Yeah, and I like the fact that they've gone with the B sedan and C sedan, sort of smaller displacement Trans Am, because it's such a big part of the Trans Am history. I do the modern Trans Am at the moment, and that's great. And we also know the Pony Wars and the history of the big muscle cars, but it's great to see the other contributors to Trans Am and what made it so special.
Yeah, well, especially the car I drive is a Penske Javelin in that group, and
awesome.
That era of Trans Am cars was American muscle cars, and
absolutely.
And they were really great cars. They were great size and great performance, and putting them on the racetrack was unbelievable when you look back at all those cars racing, whether it was a Ford or Chevy or a Pontiac or a Chrysler product. It was pretty amazing.
Does it give you a sense of what the likes of Mark Donohue and so on were like as characters and racing drivers? Because you've driven, I don't know how many cars, I've seen you around the world, but you know your cars and you've driven so many. But does it give you a sort of respect for how they went about their racing?
Well, yeah, because those cars, they drove the wheels off those cars. They most of the guys that were in them, whether it was Parnelli or Mark or Fulmer or any of those guys, they all of them drove stuff that was a lot faster in their primary racing, and probably somewhat less safer. So when they got in the Trans Am car, they weren't afraid to just stand on the gas and bump fenders and push each other and lean on the cars, because they knew the cars were tough and pretty damn safe for very aggressive driving.
Bruce, what we're watching on track now is our Group 1, and these what we're calling the GP and Voiturettes, effectively Grand Prix cars before there was a World Championship. Have you ever done any of the ERAs or any of the older cars like this?
I haven't. I haven't.
Would you like to or not?
Yeah, I would.
No safety belts.
Yeah,
tough on the brakes.
Well, I drove lots of stuff that wasn't so safe back in the day, so kind of used to that anyway.
What do you enjoy driving, or do you just enjoy driving anything?
Well, I like driving lots of stuff, but on the road I enjoy my Porsches. I mean, yeah. They drive fabulous. They're really a driver's car, and they're a performance car at the same time, and it's one of the few cars that you sit in the seat and you really feel one with the car. And on the track, I like all kinds of things. And you know, I grew up in dirt cars, and I did sprint cars for 6 years, and that was my favorite race car. Sprint cars. They're a little hard on your body at times, but they're definitely the most fun of anything I ever drove.
Just before you joined us, we were talking about the Miller collection, and we were talking about board racing, and that was something I was just completely unaware of until I moved to the States, that you actually race cars on wooden boards, and people would duck and put their heads up to have a look, you know, as they came up at the fairgrounds.
Oh yeah, I mean, they did it with cars and motorcycles both.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Unbelievable. We've also got James Alder coming in, again, a man who drives the Jaguar XK 120 and has been out on track also, as has Bruce Canepa. That's who joins us here for our Group 1 soiree of fantastic cars, Bugattis, ERAs. We've got an R2B out there. We've got an R2A, as well as a few Alfa Romeos. I don't know if you look down the list, guys, if there are any you want to pick out that you like, or you can just look at the ones on screen, like the ones like the Alfa Romeo coming through, shot right now, the 111.
Well, it's hard not to love an 8C Alfa. That's about as good as it gets.
Now, what a beautiful, sophisticated piece of machinery. And of course, this was the era that really got Mercedes-Benz when Hitler was coming into power, and they put the government behind the Mercedes-Benz. It was these cars that Mercedes wanted to race against, wanted to dominate. That resulted in the incredible Mercedes-Benz Grand Prix car, the open-wheel Grand Prix Mercedes-Benz with supercharged twin-cam 8-cylinder engines, and then the V16 of the Auto Union. They wanted to demonstrate to the rest of the world that they could beat those Alfa Romeos, and of course the ERAs. Those two ERAs are just incredible cars. I know you spoke about it yesterday, standing for English Racing Automobile. And then post-war, it was BRM. It was the same guys. British Racing Motor Car, I believe.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, just really incredible history. those cars, those ERAs, as well as that Alfa, they might very well be doing faster lap times than I was in the XK120, which may not necessarily be saying much, but they're very, very fast pre-war cars.
Hey, I don't care. If you drive your car to each and every historic event, I think you can get a pass for how fast you're going. This man drives all across the mountains from Reno to bring his Jaguar here.
I know. Yes.
So we're looking at the 39 right now. This is another Alfa Romeo from 1939 as we watch our Group 1 cars on track.
Now, Jonathan, you may know was the two ERAs, and Bruce, you may know also, there was two cars that was Remus and Romulus. Are one of those two of these two ERAs that we see here? Because they were really dominant back in the day. I think owned by what one would have referred to back then as the Prince of Siam, which the movie The King and I was made about with Yul Brynner.
Yeah.
And was it Prince Bira?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, the Bira brothers were
the
big
Bira brothers, right?
Yeah.
So Remus and Romulus.
That's
so
right.
were they named after the Greek gods, the mythological Greek gods?
That was the name of their cars. Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Well, you got to name your car. Jensen
exactly.
Button used to name his car. So 7 laps to go. And as we say, we're looking at the sights and sounds. Paddington Dowling, I'm sure somebody you know all too well. Here's another perennial historic racer. He's in that ERA R2A. He got a win yesterday in this group. And once again is running second on track to Charles McCabe. Tell us if you know any history of any of the drivers out there, because I'm always interested. The cars have their own history, but it's also I'm interested in the guys that take to the wheel, and I'm sure you have the odd coffee now and again with them.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a number of these guys have been doing these cars for a long time, and Paddens especially, he drives the wheels off those cars.
Oh, he does. Paddens is
really
great,
really good in those cars, and then you got Ivan down there, Zaremba, and that's a guy that knows how to work on every single inch of the car, and he's
Ivan has driven such a wide variety of cars, and excuse me for interrupting, but John Kerr, he's on the camera right now. He's not a young guy and still at it. I mean, he told me not to disclose his age. He does not want to have any problem renewing his racing credentials. But let me tell you, he's up there, and he is just having the time of his life. He loves this, and he's one of my heroes.
And he's in the American car.
Yes.
Yeah.
Against Europe's greatest.
Yes, exactly. He'd be in the front if he was on a dirt track oval.
Now this is a Miller Schofield Champ car that we're looking at from 1932. John Kerr at the wheel. And
that was one of the cars, of course, that was driven on the board tracks.
Yep.
And I believe Brooklyn's originally was a board track, and these cars went, very, very fast. I mean, well over the, 100 miles per hour.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, this particular car that we're talking about was actually found, the 132 I'm talking about, we're looking at the 17, that's Greg Whitten in the ERA, but that Miller Schofield Champ car was actually found as a wreck in the 80s and then restored. So I love to hear history like that, where people find something in a barn and go, what the heck is that? And then take it back to fruition and bring it to an historic event like this and get someone like Bruce or yourself to go and pedal it around. I think it's great stories.
Yeah. Well, we're all caretakers for these cars. So that's the idea.
Well,
talk about that a little bit, because I love that expression. It's something that's sort of come to my knowledge, is that the owners, the collectors, they're not really owners of the cars. They pay a lot of money to be caretakers of them and then pass them on in history to the next owner or the next collector.
Well, and that's what's important. And because if we don't do that, then future generations won't even know these cars existed or why they existed or how they existed. And when you look at a modern automobile, you look at like these supercars parked out here, and you say all that started from somewhere, and it started right here. It started with these cars, and started with the guys before computers using their brain to figure out how to make all this stuff work.
I know, that's what just blows my mind now in terms of design. You know, we're talking about the Zinger that we're looking across the board at. They're using 3D printers to come up with what they want to put on the car, and they can change it overnight if they need to with a computer. And then you think about the guys back in the day that were designing these cars, and they had to do it by hand.
Oh yeah, and you look, you know, especially the engines. You look at a Miller engine or a Bugatti engine or an Alfa, and you look at all the technology in that engine in the 30s, and you say, man, that's some smart people, and they were using all their brain resources to come up with some incredible things. And that experience obviously has all been translated to a computer today to do it faster and more efficient than before, but it's still the same. It came from a man that figured it out.
There's been a position change, by the way. Paddens is now leading this race.
Not a surprise.
About
he won
4.5 laps left. Yes.
Yeah, he won yesterday in his ERA R2A, so I don't see any reason why he wouldn't do it again. We just got a quick glimpse of that 35 Railton Light Sport Tourer, a mark of British automobiles made there by Famiel Engineering Company in Cobham in Surrey back in 1933. But it was Ivan Zaremba you were talking about from New York, who's been with the company for 28 years. So another great story. We're just seeing it come through now. That looks a beast to drive, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Heavy duty up the Rahal Straight.
But look at how well it's doing. I mean, look at the difference in the design and style of these cars. They all wanted to, you know, accomplish the same purpose. Oh my God, look at this. 2 sets of cars going into the corkscrew, 2 abreast practically.
Bruce, I got to ask you this. You do race around the world in these cars and all over America. Is Laguna like one of the bigger challenges for historics? I'm thinking like, I don't know, Watkins Glen or Lime Rock would be a little bit easier than here.
Well, yeah. I mean, Laguna is interesting because I tell guys, I don't think I've ever found the fastest line around here. and it's you know, I was just at the IndyCar race and I watched all their lines at the IndyCar race. I'm friends with a team owner, and we had a great time. And I was watching video everywhere, and the IndyCar guys were going down into turn 2 straight down, and then a sharp turn and straight out. They were not apexing the corners at all. They were going clear to the outside of 2 going in, and then darting back like a drag race to 3. And I said, I've never seen that line before, and I guess I'll have to try that. So, but you know, this is a place that no matter how many times you go around it, and I've been around it a few times, you're always learning something here.
This is like the game of golf. I mean, you never stop learning.
That's a good parallel, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't do that game, so the hell, I'll just stress on this one, learning this one.
2 things you can't master: golf and motor racing. Some give it a damn good try, but I would argue even Tiger Woods would say he's still learning. Padding Stallion then taking the lead ahead of Charles McCabe in our Group 1. We were just looking at that 1946 Delage D6. Beautiful, absolutely gorgeous car. The Delage D6 race cars were built for the 1947 season and featured 142 brake horsepower. Here it comes in that beautiful blue color. Matthew Cobb at the wheel.
French blue.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another thing worth mentioning, of course, the national colors. I wish they'd go back to that because I think it's so distinctive, like in modern cars, the British being British racing green and the French being blue. And yeah, fantastic.
Of course, Briggs Cunningham, when he was campaigning his cars, he always, they were typically white, and I think with a red and blue stripe representing an American driver in a British car, or a car, of course, of his own design, the Cunningham.
Yeah.
Which I haven't seen any here this.
I think there's one.
The one.
Yeah.
Wow.
Certainly saw it on the list. Whether I've seen it out is another question. Beautiful sights and sounds of Group 1, Bruce Canepa and James Alder here with 3 laps to go, and we're just looking at the number 7.
I think Padden's in his normal spot.
Yes. Evidently, I was reading up about Paddy Starling that his father was a butcher. I mean, he couldn't come further away from motor racing in Ireland, but he got the bug like you all do. You all come from different walks of life and different ways of getting. How did you get in, Bruce? How did you get your love for motor racing?
Well, my dad, when I was born, my dad was in the car business. He was a car dealer. He didn't really like racing. And
what did he deal in?
He had Ford Lincoln Mercury and International Trucks and BMW and a number of franchises. And I loved cars by the time literally 3 or 4 years old. And I think he was kind of hoping I wouldn't race because I was kind of a maniac on everything, starting with a bicycle. So,
what did you first race?
First car I ever raced was actually a sportsman car at Watsonville Speedway. And
another position change, by the way. Charles McCabe just picked off Paddens Dowling. Now he leads this race.
All right.
Then what? What did you go on to?
Then I went to Super Modifieds, and I drove for a car owner that had some good cars, and then from there he wanted me to move to the South and drive NASCAR because he was buying NASCAR teams, and I didn't really want to. I drove a couple NASCAR races, but I wanted to drive sprint cars, and so I went to sprint cars for I spent about 6 years in sprint cars.
That's tough.
And that car teaches you more about car control than anything you can drive, and it makes you aware that there's sometimes you need to have a little bit of fear. But they were the most fun. And then from there I got to drive. I went road racing and drove 935s almost immediately in road racing, and and eventually 962s. And I was really fortunate. I ended up being asked to drive the first March GTP car with Bobby Rahal and Jim Truman.
Wow. And
I drove that, and and then of course we ran off to Pikes Peak at one point, and I did that the first time in a car that weighed 1,000 pounds, and it was really quick there. We were the set the qualifying record, and we were the fastest in the race, and then I went back there 20 years later and drove that Kenworth truck that weighed 13,000 pounds.
Now, I got to ask you a question, and I think I know the answer, but surely halfway up Pikes Peak, do you not turn to yourself inside your head going, what on earth am I doing?
Well,
I would.
I did that before I took.
Too, by the way.
I did that before I took the green flag.
Because people who don't know, Pikes Peak really, certainly when you're talking about when you went up it, well, there is no more safety. I mean, it's just a mountain, quite literally.
Yeah.
And if you get it wrong, it's going to be a long way down.
Yeah, but it was fun. It was all gravel when I did it, and
yeah, they paved it now, haven't they?
Yeah, they paved it now. Yeah, it's a different place now than it was, and not in a bad way, just different. But
this race for first place, by the way, is just really heating up.
I know. I was just
obviously, Paddens Dowling wants that position back, and we're getting near the end here. But
absolutely. James, what was your first car?
My very first
car
in high school.
There we go.
Yeah, there he goes. Look at that. Dive on the inside going into 11.
There you go. Padding Dowling then in the 1934 ERA takes the lead for now anyway. We're about to start the final lap. Or are we racing to the line? Oh, it's the white flag.
Look at that.
And this is a cracking race, yes. This is on, absolutely. 6 versus 7.
Oh, he's going to try to outbreak him on the inside.
It's an ERA fest. Charles McCabe, they both won it. All right, I'll put both the racer driver hats on. Where would you go if you were behind in the 6? Where would you go for the move?
Well, I don't want to say because they get mad at me for where I go.
Well, this back marker they're coming up may play a role in this. There's a huge disparity of performance. Oh, no, they both are going to get by clean.
Okay, they're getting out of the way.
4 and 5.
But he's got
that was the Delage that they're passing, that they're lapping there.
McCabe, though, has pulled away distinctly as they come through 5
no,
and still ahead of the hill.
Paddens Dowling.
That's Paddens.
Oh, yeah,
that is now in the
Excuse
lead.
me.
So he put the hammer down going on the inside of the Andretti hairpin, and looks like he's going to make it stick. These are super talented drivers. I mean, just look at the way they drift those cars.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, they're doing the drivers of those period of 1936 proud because they are pushing those machines, no question about it. And I've got 2 very experienced racing drivers who are kind of nodding along, and they would disagree with me if I was wrong. But those guys know what they're doing, don't they?
Yeah, I know. Paddens knows the limits of those cars probably better than anybody.
I agree.
So,
a wonderful race here to see here in our Group 1, our earliest group for the early 1927 to 49, 27 to 37 in terms of sports and touring cars, but GP and Voiturette racing cars.
Unless Paddens loops it, he's got it wrapped up here.
Here we go then. Paddens Dowling in the 1936. excuse me, in the 1934 ERA. Comes across the line, takes the checkered flag. Only just, mind you, but enough to win. And that's how you do it, folks.
Yeah, Charles McCabe made that pass, but it was after the checkered.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
Great
2
race.
years
He'll probably
older.
give the position back.
Yeah, the R6B from 1936. Charles McCabe, as you mentioned, coming across the line in second. Excellent stuff.
So, Jonathan, to answer your question, my first car in high school was a TR4. I had friends that were building...
So you went straight to the British mark?
Well, I had friends that were building muscle cars, but I suffered from what I always referred to as the James Bond syndrome.
Yes,
and
I can see from the flat hat.
That was, you had to have a car that could go around corners as well as go reasonably fast in a straight line.
And not spill your martini.
Right. British sports cars or European sports cars represented that to me. I had a friend in high school that had an MGB, another friend that had a bug-eyed Sprite. I went for a ride in that MGB, and I thought, hey, this is really what it's all about. My brother was building a 57 Chevy in the garage, and that's when I sort of learned a lot of four-letter words. He would be breaking his knuckles on that 57 Chevy. There would be a scream of some sort of four-letter word, then followed by the sound of glass breaking as he threw a wrench through the garage window. I looked at a different approach. I decided gentleman sports car driving and racing was the thing to do. And part of that was also inspired by my visit to Elkhart Lake when I was in high school. So,
well, listen, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.